Welcome to Leaving Nothing to Chance, your go-to podcast where we bring you insights from some of the most influential voices in small business and personal development. Each week, we dive deep into conversations with top thought leaders, authors, and business moguls from around the world, sharing their secrets to success and strategies for growth. Tune in for exclusive content that will inspire, motivate, and equip you to take your journey to the next level. This is Leaving Nothing to Chance.
All right, part two with my friend Monica Crawford. And Monica's book, of course, is Thriving Inside the Thin Blue Line. And Monica, I have to ask you, the thin blue line, is that a normal law enforcement reference or is that something you came up with? I haven't heard that before.
Yeah, so when you see the law enforcement flags that has the black with the blue line and then the black again, that's just referred to as the thin blue line. So a lot of it is sold as like marketed as a thin blue line flag or like a bracelet or any sort of merchandise that has that logo or emblem or whatever you want to call it.
Okay, so in part one, we covered the red letter day that happened to you and your husband. And I think at that point, you probably started to make some decisions. Fair to say?
Yeah, so the other interesting piece to that is that night that that had happened, it was our Friday shift, essentially. It was our final shift of the week. We worked 4 10s, so it was our fourth shift for that week. The 3 days following that was when we got engaged. And when we returned back to work for our Monday shift, that's when those letters were in our boxes. So I have no proof, but that sequence of events was quite odd considering that all happened the way it did. So I'm not sure if him seeing our public engagement had something to do with the way that happened.
So you were at a point where it's okay, you had trained to be in law enforcement, you wanted to be in law enforcement, you thought this is a 25, 30-year career that you could do it and retire from it. But it happens with a lot of people in all sorts of life situations, all sorts of business situations, certainly, is that you have to pivot, right? And you have to be agile to say, okay, maybe this wasn't the best thing to do. I thought it was, and I did it. Been there, got the T-shirt or whatever that expression they use is. And you're already obviously a Division I gymnastic athlete. Obviously, you're a great athlete, and always into fitness and nutrition and training and everything else. So, tell us, when did you start to put the business plan together for 50 Fierce and Fit and the philosophy to help these other officers to clean up their health?
Yeah, so it was probably 6 months before that event, or maybe more, that I began applying to other positions outside of the agency because I was trying to figure out what I knew. I was unhappy and I was trying to figure out my next steps. And unfortunately, nothing was lining up for me. And so in January of 2022, I was informally coaching some people with nutrition coaching. It was just people at the department or friends or things like that, where it was very minimal of what I was doing. But in January of that year, I saw an ad on Facebook for a business coach. And I went and talked to my fiance at the time, my husband now. I was like, hey, do you think I could do this? I said, I actually have more experience in education in nutrition and fitness combined than I do with years on as a law enforcement officer right now. This could make sense. And he's, yeah, I don't think you can lose by investing in this. At the very least, it's a side hustle and some extra money. So I was like, okay. And so I went ahead and jumped in, and I was burning the candle at both ends from January through April that year. Because actually, when I started my business is when those disciplinary issues started rolling in as well. So I think those may have ruffled some feathers within the department for some reason or another. But essentially, what happened is in April of that year, I had applied for an instructor position with the VOTEC. So it was a criminal justice instructor position. It was going to be still under that umbrella of my degree, but not specifically law enforcement per se. I was one of the final two who were chosen in that process, and they went with the other person. And so you're like, darn, okay, no hard feelings there. It's just who they wanted. But that's when pretty much shit hit the fan at the police department. And I was like, I gotta leave. Like, I can't stay here anymore. And so I made the jump, and call it God, the universe, whatever you believe, it lined up that week where I surpassed my full-time income with the clientele that I had on my caseload at the time. I knew I had a story to tell. I knew I had been through challenges. I knew other women in law enforcement and first responder fields would relate to my story. And that's where I just jumped in and started with nutrition and fitness programs with them to help them get fit for duty or help them hold their own, prove themselves, any of these things, or just be better people, better role models, better balanced in their life. And it's taken me on a wild since then, for sure.
And talk a bit about the trauma bond that some of these lady officers go through.
Yeah, so I describe in the book what a trauma bond is. And traditionally, the term is used in domestic violence relationships. And there's 6 or 7 stages. I can't remember off the top of my head, but essentially it starts with a love bombing phase where they give you gifts or they're incredibly encouraging, wanting you in the relationship. And then you go through the cycle of abuse where like the breaking point is, they beat you down, and then they will gaslight you and say, "Oh no, it's okay. Don't worry about it. This won't happen again." And then the love bombing stage starts again. So it's the cycle of, "I love you, you're a piece of crap, but hey, don't worry about it. I still love you. Please stay." Essentially. So that happens in domestic violence relationships. And that's the, like, when I discovered this term, I literally had tears in my eyes because I was like, this explains the toxic work environment at the police department because I could identify every single stage that I walked through to get there. Because after going through this whole internal affairs process that was incredibly traumatizing, because I thought they were going to just destroy my career by this one thing, which they didn't have the control to do. Again, blinders on in the situation that you're in. They then minimized it. They're like, here's your punishment, but oh, by the way, don't worry about it. It's gonna be okay. What? I don't understand. And the crazy thing is that my husband, I watched him walk through it again because they were even more back in the love bombing stage with him because he chose to stay after I left for another year or a year and a half until another position lined up for him. And it was the thing like, hey, buddy, don't worry about it. This isn't going to limit you. You're still going to be able to do whatever you want to do. It's just a slap on the wrist. Like, no, like, we both got a 3-year letter of reprimand, which essentially meant that if you applied to a specialty unit to come off of patrol, they could use that letter to make you ineligible. And the chief had to waive it. So the chief had to say, no, we'll ignore that and we'll let you through. And he's now I can't do anything for the next 3 years. Like, I'm here on patrol unless somebody wants to give me the pass. And it was the same thing for me, but I was already running into brick walls trying to get to where I wanted to get to. And I knew after the shift letter, I was like, I can't expect anything at this point.
How much does depression come into play with some of these situations? I imagine it's a big issue.
Yeah, it's hard to label it or to put it into a bucket as far as putting a term with an emotion, if you will. I think within my healing journey, I've gone through ups and downs with those symptoms of depression. The bigger thing for me was the anxiety, which is basically being in a state of fight or flight. And that's where the chronic stress comes from. So that's what caused all my health issues that I speak of too. And it's really just talking about your nervous system. Your nervous system is on, like, I'm hyper aware. It's called hypervigilance. Like, I'm hyper aware of anything that happens. So a good example of that in a domestic violence situation would be like hearing a door slam a certain way and being on edge because you're like, oh God, here they come. Something's going to happen to me type of thing. When you're in a toxic work environment, you're always waiting for the other shoe to drop. So you're always waiting for the next complaint, or you're always waiting to get in trouble. You're always waiting for somebody to have a problem with you. And you can't allow yourself to rest and digest and like down regulate and remove yourself from that environment. So it was definitely an up and down mental struggle for me. And the added layer to that during the injury was that I lost my coping mechanism too, because fitness and activity was my coping mechanism. So, especially with the injury, I struggled mentally because I felt like I had lost myself as far as like my body composition, and I was injured at the time. And it just became that added layer because I didn't have that coping mechanism or outlet too. So I see, unfortunately, again, this is just my perspective. When you get into the talks of like officer suicide and first responder suicide, like I see how the culture within the department could possibly be a factor to that because it doesn't even begin to talk about the trauma that's experienced on the street with the people, the calls, the things that just gets layered on top. And so if you're in an agency where you feel like nobody supports you or nobody cares about you, but yet you're running yourself ragged for this place 40, 50, 60 hours a week, it's really easy to keep getting dragged further and further down because you're not seeing anything positive around you at all.
And you mentioned in the book early periomenopause that happened with yourself. Is this something common that happens with other female officers that are under similar traumatic situations?
So that term was what one doctor had told me, which her assumption or conclusion was of it. Essentially, what happened with me is the chronic stress threw everything just a little bit off, where altogether it created a chaotic mess. But it was like my thyroid levels were elevated. My liver function was decreased. My gut health, I had a parasite and gut dysbiosis. I had migraines. I had joint pain. I had hormone imbalance. So all of these things that just because your body is so stressed it starts to throw everything out of whack. And actually, what I'm starting to see more and more of some of the women that I coach is that it's leading to diagnoses of prediabetes in women. It's PCOS. It leads to chronic illness, and it's just being in that fight or flight mode all the time, that hypervigilant state. It can start affecting your body in different ways. And the weight gain too. I had unexplained weight gain. The cortisol belly, I used to think it wasn't a thing. I used to think that was BS, and then it happened to me, and I was like, okay, this is no longer BS. This is a problem, and it's because of stress.
And the adrenal function, I'm sure, is a mess as well.
Yep.
So let's talk about solutions. What should officers, and for that matter, other listeners to our show who aren't in law enforcement, but they're in hopefully not similar situations, but some of them, unfortunately, I'm sure are. What do they need to look out for?
So that's what I go into in the book as well, is ways to take back your control. Because at some point, things have gotten off balance out of kilter where you're in a heightened state of stress because of work is being so demanding. And there's other things that can layer into that too. Maybe your marriage isn't going great. Maybe your kids are stressing you out because they're dealing with something. Maybe you got like a cancer diagnosis in your family. Maybe you lost somebody at work, line of duty death, or just a family member who died. There's so many things that can add to this equation. But if you're going to take care of yourself and try to take back your control, it's focusing on four main buckets that I teach, which is sleep, self-care, nutrition, and exercise. And the bigger picture to that puzzle is the time management and structure part of it, of making time to implement the new habits. Because again, going back to nothing changes if nothing changes. And changing our habits and routines are one of the most challenging things that we do because we're humans, we're creatures of habit. So if you want to change the way you brushed your teeth for 20 years and brush with your other hand, you're going to have to remind yourself every day you pick up the toothbrush, hey, I got to use the other hand. So it's similar to that with any habit as far as, okay, sleep, I'm getting 5 hours. How can I work up to 7 hours of sleep? Let's go to bed a half an hour earlier. Let's wake up a half an hour later if we can. Instead of eating out 5 times a week, let's shoot for three. And let's try to start cooking at home more. Maybe we don't, a lot of people address it from the top down of I'm out of shape, I'm unhealthy, I need to hit the gym first. No, that's backwards. Maybe we don't go so hard in the gym. Maybe we pull back and say, hey, you need to walk more because we need to pull the stress bucket back down and focus on these other three things more. So if you are dealing with any sort of stress, or maybe you're seeing the warning lights of high blood pressure, pre-diabetes, some things, maybe thyroid's getting goofy, going back to those four main buckets is going to help reverse some of those effects. I had a client also who was able to reverse her pre-diabetes and get rid of her antidepressant within the 6 months that we worked together. And it really goes back to those four main buckets.
Those are four main buckets. So, what to eat and when to eat? What would your response be to that?
Whole foods that are naturally occurring in nature. You're trying to look for single ingredient foods. If you're going for a packaged food, look at the ingredient label on the back before the nutrition facts. Make sure it's got less than 10 ingredients in it, because if it's got more than that, it's probably highly processed. Food quality is king before you even talk about quantity or specific goals, which is where people get into the weeds and start to overcomplicate it a little bit. Timing, I would say pick 3 times a day to keep your breakfast, lunch, and dinner consistent as much as you can. And if you have a job that schedule is non-consistent, maybe give yourself a 2-hour window. So give yourself a 2-hour window for breakfast, for lunch, and for dinner to keep those consistent for you. And then if you're needing something else, maybe you add in snacks in between those times. If you need it, keep some snacks with you. But if you can keep your sleep consistent and your meal times consistent, that's usually a big help for most people as far as working towards a health or fitness goal.
And CrossFit is your suggestion for some people, most people, all people, or some version thereof, maybe modified injury age, health history, etc.
So for first responders and anybody who is on their feet more often than not, maybe even people like in the trades, blue collar workers, I would say functional fitness, some form of fitness is helpful because it's going to be most applicable to your job. You need to pick up heavy people and equipment, so you need to be able to deadlift. You need some leg strength for climbing or moving. You need to back squat, things like that. If you're pushing stuff overhead, like lifting heavy material up on a roof, like you need to be able to strict press. So that's where I would say it depends. For most people, it depends on your goals and it depends on what you enjoy doing, because what you enjoy doing, you'll stick with. So I'm not the one size fits all of, yeah, everybody needs to CrossFit. No. Some people who come to me say, I love my Orange Theory. I hit it 3 days a week. Okay, great. Let's focus on the nutrition. I'm not going to come and tell you my way is the best way, but I'm going to give you suggestions based on what you're telling me your goals are and what your lifestyle demands are.
I love what you're saying. I go back to the great Jack LaLanne, right? And Jack had that statement that nutrition is king, exercise is queen. You put them together and you got a kingdom. And that's what you're doing with people, Monica, which is great. So let's talk a little bit. Where do they get the book?
The book can be found on Amazon. You can search it and find it on Amazon. I just got my website up this week, finally. Proud of myself because I did that thing by myself. If you're a small business owner, you know the struggle with technology. It's www.50fierceandfit.com/info. And so you can find all of my services, my social media links, how to get in touch with me there. There's a link to the book link and Amazon as well from that page.
And we'll put that in the show notes too. We'll make sure we correspond after for that. And you're happily married now. You're training now. You've got beautiful dogs, one of which has joined the conversation. You can't see him, but what the little black one that's in the corner there.
Yeah.
He woke up and he looked like he said hello. Okay. So what's next, Monica? What are we doing? What's the next either reinvention or continuity, okay, in helping and coaching these folks to get themselves cleaned up, get them to be safer, not only if they're in law enforcement, obviously on the streets, but also more importantly, or as importantly anyway, I should say, off the streets so that they maintain good, healthy lifestyles. They serve the public and we need to serve them better so they're not having these heart attacks and strokes at premature ages.
Yeah, so what I'm leading into right now is building a safe and supportive community for female first responders and women in male-driven fields. And I've created a platform, it's a group on School, SKOOL. You can find the 50 Fierce and Fit community there. My goal is to grow that group and create a tight-knit online community because women, especially, there's usually like less than 5 of us at a department, maybe, depending on what you're looking at. And so oftentimes we don't have other support from women because we have to travel somewhere to a conference once a year to go find it. And then you only see that one person once a year or every year or whatever. So I would like to build that positive and supportive community on a platform that's away from social media, that's away from a lot of people being concerned of my stuff's going to get screenshot and used against me and things like that. So I want to create that safe community and grow it. And I want it to be for those looking for personal and professional growth. So it doesn't necessarily mean you need to have a health or fitness goal, I just want it to be a group of supportive women who help each other through life and career. And then, of course, if you want the health and fitness piece and the coaching, that's available to you too. Because my goal long term is to start creating some like in-person events and retreat style things to bring us all together in person. So I want that online community there for that. But then for those in the future who want to come in person and have some fun for the weekend together, that will set that up too.
Monica, this has been a privilege. And what you're doing, it's incredibly important. Like I said, we see our officers out here every day where I live, and there are other people do across the United States and elsewhere where they listen to our show. We appreciate what they do, and we sometimes forget that they're people. You want them to show up when, God forbid, you have an accident or a flat tire at 2 o'clock in the morning, but then we forget these people have families and health issues and all of that too. And a lot of them are suffering and struggling with things that you're helping them with. So thank you for being you, my friend. And I'll give you the last word.
Thank you. I appreciate it. For anybody listening, my main line is know that you're not stuck. We rise by lifting others, but first we must lift ourselves. So you need to give back to you first. And you're one decision away from a totally different life. So you have the control, even though it might be hard to see at times, but you control your future and you have the power to do that.
Thank you again, Monica, and always good to visit with you.
Thank you. I appreciate it, John.
Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to check back weekly for more exciting episodes. And don't miss Ink and Insight every Wednesday, where we celebrate iconic authors and dive into their impactful works.